Hey, I'm Nick DeMatteo, and welcome to Season 5, Episode 1 of Music is Not a Genre. That's right, it is the banner first episode of the 5th season. Hope you had a great summer. Thank you, as always, for watching and listening. Thank you to my new Patreon subscribers that I got this summer. If you would like to support this podcast and everything I do, especially my band Rec's music, go to patreon.com/musicisnotagenre. You can also support this podcast audio version at anchor.fm/musicisnotagenre. And my public hub is youtube.com/Nick DeMatteo, where you get these videos and much, much more. My website, where you get everything else, is nickdematteo.com. And last but not least, certainly not least, please patronize my band, REC, as you see on this t-shirt if you are watching and not just listening, REC, at recarea.bandcamp.com or wherever you stream fine music. Let's get right to it this week. I'm very excited to start this new season. A lot of changes have happened over the summer. There are a lot more changes in store. And I thought I would kick off the season with kind of an overview and a preview. So I'm calling this episode A to Z for me, my sweet picks, and a season preview. See what I did there? The SP, sweet pick season preview. Yes, that was very, very, very clever. This has some history to it. As you know, I love lists, I love numbers, I love doing all of that stuff, and this kind of feeds right into that. It was inspired by a good friend and old bandmate of mine, Pete Bradis, who is also an excellent author. Look up the book Unstrung Heroes, about lesser-known guitar players, lead guitarists that you should know, including Terry Kath and people like that. Pete Bradis asked everyone on a social media network to name their favorite music artists, bands, solo, whatever, A to Z. So I created a list, shared it, etc. That was a while ago. I have since updated that list for this episode, as a matter of fact, and I'm going to be sharing it with you today. A through Z, every letter of the alphabet represented. Favorite artists in music of any kind, not just specifically pop or rock. Anything that came to mind that I thought was worth it. This was also inspired by a more recent bandmate of mine. He was a fill-in drummer who is around my age and said that he stopped listening to new music after 1990. Now, there are those of you out there who have done something similar. The date is probably different for you, and that's totally fine. Music is a personal thing. You make your decision about what you like, what you love, what you want to listen to, what makes you feel good, what gives you the energy that you need, whatever it is, or if that music serves a purpose in some other way. Great, that's awesome. It's not my vibe. I've been someone since I was very small who has kept up on music, the current state of music, every year. I'm always looking for new things. You will hear some of those new things talked about, most especially in my Podfast episodes, which, yes, are not done. That wasn't just a summer thing. I'm going to be doing shorty episodes that I call Podfast throughout the season and beyond, and that's where you'll hear some of the new music. But I think and I hope that I represent lots of different kinds of music in this list here. And that was not the attempt. These happen to be my favorite artists. I think it's pretty comprehensive. I think every single favorite artist that I currently have is on there. If I've missed one, you're going to hear about it in a future episode. But at the moment, this is, I think, a pretty comprehensive list. And it's got some rules, because it's more fun with rules. It really is. That's why sports are fun for people. First of all, it's alphabetized in what I say is the correct way, which is if it's a solo artist with two names, first name, surname, you alphabetize it by the surname. So Billy Joel is in J, not in B. As any good record store, organizer would know, Okay. Second, I have to have heard most or all of their catalog. So this does not include artists whose one album I really love but haven't quite dived into the rest of their catalog yet. They may become a future favorite artist, but I can't determine that yet. On the same wavelength, it doesn't include newer artists who I'm into right now, like Rita Sawayama, Abia Badubi, people like that, who have Japanese Breakfast, another good one, who have put out albums that I enjoy, even Harry Styles, but I don't know yet. Not enough material is out there. I haven't stayed with them long enough. I haven't included artists that I was once into, but I haven't followed, or I'm not into anymore, or just haven't followed. Maybe haven't kept up on, like Harry Connick Jr., who I was hugely into for a while, way back. Japan Droids, look them up if you don't know them. I think their second album, I want to say it is, was amazing. Shonen Knife, Japanese band, amazing. I don't know what they've done since who knows how long, but those are examples. They also haven't included artists whose careers were just too short to have had a strong impact on me. The one that comes to mind would be Jeff Buckley. That album was a favorite of mine, but it's, there was just, I know there was a follow-up of sorts, but that was after he died, and I just don't really know how to classify that. I also really have not included my honorable mentions for a good reason, because I started to make a list of in parentheses, honorable mentions. The list is below, by the way, if you want to see it. Take a preview right now. I couldn't include the honorable mentions because there were hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. I just had to stop. So I didn't put in people like Curtis Blow, who had a huge impact on me early on, but I haven't followed, don't know as much about. I haven't included the White Stripes, who were really close, but didn't quite make my cut, not because they're not great. They are great. They're not a heart artist, as I say. And I haven't included all of the chronology, if you know that MxG term. MxG, I think, something like that. Check out. If you can come up with better hand and arm gestures, do it, please, because I'm struggling with that. And that's because not everyone I listen to becomes a favorite or was a favorite or is a favorite, but I still do it because I think it's valuable. I listen to all of Frank Zappa's material. He's not on my list. I have included a couple of questionable picks for one reason. I'm a completist, and plus Pete, way back, asked for every letter of the alphabet. So even though I don't have strong feelings about any band that starts with O or starts with Q, I put something on there because I wanted to represent those letters. You may have different rules. Then you can do that on your podcast. And I'd love to see your podcast. Let me know if you have one. I did sometimes include solo work from a band member, but not always. That's just sort of a side note. And I am done with the notes. Why don't we just get into the freaking list? It's about time, right? You'll also notice I don't have anything displayed back here because this is a very freewheeling episode. It's the first episode, and I may figure out what to put on top of these awesome custom speakers. There's a lot of CDs inside them because I converted them into CD shelving. CDs I don't use, but I want to keep. The best I can do as far as a display is my t-shirt here, REC, R-E-C. This is the logo that my band has been living with for years. A new logo is coming out with the new Greatest Hits album, which I'll talk a little bit more about later. Enough stalling. Letter A. Alice in Chains. Did an episode on them because I talked about Lane Staley's death. It was a Death is Dumb episode. Absolutely one of my favorites. Ape Cafe. Haven't talked much about them. You probably don't know them. It's a band I was in. This is Pete Bradis' band. Back in the 90s. It would be hard to describe them except to say it was a mix of punk, pop, rock, metal, and kind of goof. A lot of lyrics were humorous, or meant to be quirky or off-center. We often wore mummers costumes on stage. You'll have to look that up if you're from Philadelphia. You know what mummers costumes are. But just think of very elaborate Mardi Gras costumes, I guess is a good way to describe it. I recommend going on SoundCloud, searching for Ape Cafe, and listening to some of that music. Apples in Stereo, a band from the Elephant Six Collective, power pop, just bright and 60s influenced, and Robert Schneider, I believe his name is. I just did an interview with somebody from one of the Elephant Six bands, John Kieran Fernandez. It will be shown episode 6, I believe, this season is the plan. So far, that may change, but this was a band that I've been into for a really long time and featured in my Elephant Six podcast episode. Look it up if you are into Olivia Tremor Control or Apples in Stereo, anybody like that. That's Beastie Boys. Don't even get me started, and don't talk to me if you don't at least respect them. If you don't like them, that's fine. But their career, with its twists and turns, just proved what music lovers and aficionados they always were and are. They're surviving members at any rate. And the Beatles. Yeah, so I did an episode last season on Beatles books and movies and all that stuff. My plan this season, because this is in part a season preview, is to do a multi-part Beatles series. I don't know how many parts yet. I don't know how I'm going to even structure it, but I realized that even though I did my best to fit in all of some other artists, favorite artists, Prince, people like that, there's no possible way I can talk about the Beatles in the way I'd like to in just one episode. So it's going to be a multi-part thing. Stay tuned for that. The Bee Gees, a band that I liked and then got really into and did a chronology and absolutely fell in love with, because you would not believe the breadth of their work, and not to mention the depth. And the more you discover about them, or the more I discovered, the more I liked. Tony Bennett. He's probably my favorite crooner voice, and I am looking forward to his new album. I know he's struggling health-wise, but it's wonderful that he's still putting out music. I have seen him in concert, and he's over and above my favorite crooner that you would know of, and I'll tell you why I said that later. And that includes Frank Sinatra. It includes anybody else from that era, and even anybody modern today. Leonard Bernstein. Yeah, not just for West Side Story. His vigor and the way he composed, just you could feel the energy. You could see it in his conducting, and his passion for music extended far beyond classical and jazz. He was, personally, obviously didn't know him, and I know we are now passing judgment on artists for their personal lives, and who knows what kind of a person he was. But artistically, one of my favorites. Big Audio Dynamite, Mick Jones' band, after he left The Clash, had many different names, and he went on to, do, I think, Carbon Silicon or something like that. But anything related to this band, huge favorite of mine. If you don't know them, start from the beginning, or start from The Globe. That was their huge hit album. Block Party. When they debuted in, I believe, 2004, I got the tingles. And every time I share them, I get the share tingles, yes, an MxG phrase. They kind of embodied an early 80s sound that I hadn't heard in a while, and added, modern things to it that just blew me away. David, I'm sure I'll do a future Block Party episode. I don't know if it'll be this season, but it might be, especially since they put out a new album recently, and it was really good. Really, really good. David Bowie, I'll do an episode on him for Death is Dumb. The Chameleon. My admiration for him is mainly because he did whatever he wanted music-wise. He was not confined by genre. Dave Brubeck. Not only did I see him in concert, I worked with him in college, and he is probably my favorite, or at least their second favorite, or top 3 jazz pianists, and certainly one of my favorite jazz composers. Chicago. Man, if I'm going to get through these in a decent amount of time, I gotta hurry. I've done episodes on Chicago. You know how I feel about Chicago. I did one on Terry Kath. I'd like to hear from more Chicago fans. Chopin. Probably my favorite classical composer. By the way, I should have put Bach in there. A real top favorite there as well. But Chopin, just, that period, that kind of romantic period, he's my favorite. And he's probably my favorite of any classical composer, at least pre-1900. The Clash, did a chronology on them and loved that I got to hear a bunch of things that no one gets to hear. You should look into them. They were a band that you think of one thing, which is punk. Nope. They did everything. They did so many different things and kind of got tired of being confined by that, by that genre. George Clinton. I put him down because Parliament, Funkadelic, all of that stuff, but it's really what he does, everything that he does. He is a genius space cadet who brings so many different kinds of music into what he does. It has influenced so many people. Phil Collins. Don't laugh, seriously. And I think at this point no one would laugh because his body of work stands the test of time. When he went solo, the fact that he could be as big as Genesis at the same exact time is a testament to what a good songwriter he was and singer, among many other things. Cornershop, an amazing British band. Cornershop, I'm going to say them again, Cornershop. Please look them up. Brimful of Asha is the one that you probably know from the 90s if you were sentient back then. Great band. Some Eastern influence and other things in there, funky and rock and electronic. The Cure, that's a top 5 for me, and I've said it a million times. There's 15 bands in my top 5, but this is a stalwart top 5. Top 5, The Cure. I'm so excited for their new album. It's supposed to have been out already. I'm sure it'll come out soon. I've heard that there may even be 2 albums. I'm going to do an entire episode on The Cure at some point. The Dead Milkmen. Did an episode on them way, way, way back, season 1 or 2. Philadelphia punk band, kind of second wave punk, and they were kind of a jokey band who did, jokey songs. And Punk Rock Girl is probably the famous single. Nicky DeMatteo, not me, my father. He has a lot of material out there online, streaming, and on his Bandcamp page, which I think is nickydematteo.bandcamp.com. I should have looked that up. But yeah, he had a very long recording career and a diverse array of music. And I recommend looking up Nicky DeMatteo's music. Depeche Mode. I'm real sad about the death of the keyboardist and one of the main forces in Depeche Mode. But I've been following them since the beginning. Well, close to the beginning. Early 80s, I didn't know much about them, but by the mid 80s, I did, and I've been following them ever since. Absolutely one of my favorites. Probably, they may rank slightly higher than New Order, but, that doesn't really matter. The Drop, one of my pseudonyms. It's a production name that has now become an artist name. I released an album of The Drop's instrumental music called Long Held Grudges, which is only on recarea.bandcamp.com. It's kind of quirky stuff. Some of it has been featured in films. Give it a listen. I'm still producing that kind of music. The only E is Eminem. Did an episode on Eminem. Talked about his lyrical prowess. I'm always interested in hearing more from Eminem. F, Foo Fighters. The more I live with the Foo Fighters, the more I love them for so many reasons. Dave Grohl's spirit. Very sad over the death of Taylor Hawkins. I've done a Foo Fighters episode, so I won't go much into this. But yeah, their first album when it came out, and I forget the name of the song, but I think the chorus was, I don't owe you anything, or something like that. That song blew me away, and I knew that I would love them pretty much forever, no matter what twists and turns they took. F, Fountains of Wayne, power pop, just pure essence. Adam Schlesinger, I did an episode because of Death is Dumb. I believe he inspired Death is Dumb. Sad to see him die of COVID. And if I had to put a band at the top of bands people probably haven't heard enough from, I'd probably say it's Fountains of Wayne or Matthew Sweet. I'll get to Matthew Sweet. But yes, I think one of those two. G Love and Special Sauce, a Philly band who's still out there kicking it. doing an amazing job. I recorded an album with G Love's most go-to drummer and former engineer and producer way back. The album was called the Metro Grand Sessions. Give it a listen. It's on recarea.bandcamp.com. But I've always loved G Love, at least from Cold Beverage and on, and I've listened to his entire catalog. The chronology was fun. Genesis, good friend of mine's hugely into Genesis. I do not know enough about them to be able to say the things that I would say about a band like Yes, for example, but I've listened to their entire catalog. That was a chronology that was really interesting, and the reason why I put them on here is because even if there are parts of their catalog that I wasn't super into, they would consistently blow me away on more than one level. Green Day, more and more impressive. The fact that they're still making great music shows how serious they are about making great music and how they can still bring that energy into music that they had since the late 80s. Vince Guaraldi, if you know Peanuts Christmas special, you know Vince Guaraldi. He also had a big hit song called Cast Your Fate to the Wind. His style of piano playing has a kind of like laid back 60s, late 50s lounge feel that I really enjoy. It's not my only favorite kind of jazz, but it's one of them, and I have to give him major props. Hall & Oates, that is the H start. Daryl Hall and John Oates, I believe somebody told me that was their official, I heard that on a podcast, their official name is Daryl Hall and John Oates. We call them Hall & Oates, from Philly, another Philly band. And listen to them. I haven't done a chronology of theirs, but from what I understand, I believe they started more as a folk band and then kind of did, Blue Eyed Soul and all that stuff, and then they became famous. But really, if you don't like Hall & Oates, then your spirit is something's wrong with it. Jimi Hendrix, I'll do it probably. I'm going to do a Death is Dumb that includes Jimi Hendrix. That's all I'm going to say about that. That's a future thing. Hole, Courtney Love. I'm going to say this, which is, if you feel the way about Courtney Love that you do about Yoko Ono, and you believe that both of them were somehow evil or some other thing, turn this off right now. I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to know you. I find that to be misogynistic, among many other things. And if you listen to Live Through This and a bunch of things that happen after that, you will understand that Hole was a great band. Husker Du, Bob Mould's band. I mean, come on. I know he wasn't the only person in the band, but I've followed his solo career since Husker Du was broken up. That sound has shown up on some of my music, most particularly Brave the World, the final track on the Sunshine Seminar, recarea.bandcamp.com. And it's a very particular kind of post-punk. And he's a gay icon as well. He should be. Indigo Girls. There's nothing they do that I don't like. And when I hear Closer to Fine, I don't care. That's one of those rare songs that I could hear 3,000 times and never get tired of. And their harmonies are still probably, they rank up with Simon and Garfunkel and, the Beatles as far as, and Everly Brothers is just, stretching back. Two-part harmonies anyway. They rank. And that's a catalog, that's a chronology I really want to do. In Excess might do Death is Dumb with Michael Hutchence, and might mention the U2 song that was dedicated to him. But the more I listen, and I've listened to everything In Excess put out, pre and post, and I have to say, absolutely just amazing. And you need to listen to them to understand what they did beyond their hits. The Only J. It's The Only J. If there's a J you like, tell me. I want to hear how you agree or disagree with my picks. I really, 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 really do. Billy Joel. Billy Joel. He's the more I live with Billy Joel, the more he rises up to my top 5. Absolutely. One of my bands did an entire Billy Joel tribute concert, and there were things that I learned for that I hadn't known before. I had listened to them before, but I hadn't played them or sung them before. Amazingly fun, and he's frankly just brilliant. He's brilliant. Glad he's still out there performing. Wish he'd put out new material. I did a Billy Joel episode. Look it up. MxG's Billy Joel episode. The Kinks, my third favorite British first wave band, behind the Beatles and the Who. And I love singing the Kinks. The Kinks were kind of, to me, proto-punk, and then did other things. And kicked ass for a really long time, had hits through the 80s. Lenny Kravitz, I will always listen to anything he puts out. Whether it's at the top of my list or not, his approach to things is invigorating to me. He influenced very heavily a song of mine called No Way Out for Me from Symphony for the Weird, recarea.bandcamp.com. Let's do L's. Led Zeppelin. I don't know what to say about Led Zeppelin that people haven't already said. So, Led Zeppelin. Definitely on my list. John Lennon, one of those solo artists that I had to put on there, absolutely had to put on there, and I've done a podcast on him. LL Cool J. When radio came out, I realized, or I Can't Live Without My Radio, whatever it's called, I realized that I would be a hip-hop lifer. I may have realized it before then, but that really sealed the deal. And his greatest hits album, you could put that on, and that would be an entire party. It's just great. The M's, another solo artist, Paul McCartney. I'll probably do an episode fully on Paul McCartney and his other band that I'll mention later. Flap, flap, flap. But just to say now, duh, right? And yeah, I'm going to have to give him the edge as far as him being my favorite solo Beatle. Metallica was not originally on my list, but, you know, the more in hindsight that I listen to them and I know I'm excited for whatever new thing they put out, they just had to be on there. They had to. Thelonious Monk, my favorite or second favorite jazz pianist, absolutely. His kind of minimalist and kind of quirky approach to things is a real inspiration for me. Morrissey, another guy, yeah, I have to sort of quietly, judge some of his politics, but I'm not a person who lets that take away from the music, at least in this case. And I find the majority of his solo work to be very good, if not great, and always compelling. And he's from way back, so it's kind of hard to give up somebody like that for any reason. Ends, New Order. Out of the ashes. I think I did an episode, something about out of the ashes, Joy Division. And I'm always excited. They're still putting out new material, and they've had albums that have been as good as, if not better than, their classic albums in the 90s, in the O's. Look out for them. Nick, capital N, capital I, capital C, capital K, is an artist who's near and dear to my heart because it's what I called myself before I started the band REC. I released several albums under the name Nick, starting with Your EP, and all of those albums are on recarea.bandcamp.com. If not for that exploratory period, let's call it, developmental period of playing as a solo artist, so to speak, I wouldn't have been able to create a band like REC. Nirvana, Death is Dumb, I've done it. Saying they're kind of like Led Zeppelin at this point. Like, what more could anybody say about them? Just know that they're on my list. The O, this is the compromised one. Not because I don't like these bands, but because they may not rank. But I had to put somebody. So I put down Oasis because I was hugely into them, and I do respect them. And I think that Noel Gallagher's solo stuff is incredible. It really is. And I forget the name of his band, High Flying something or other. Look it up. Look it up because it's awesome. It's really good. He's the real main force behind that band, I think. Ozzy Osbourne. I almost put Black Sabbath on here, but I know diehard Black Sabbath fans, and it would have been unfair for me to put that on here. Sort of the same with Ozzy, but when I listen to him and when I understand what his influences are and how he kind of morphed those into what he does, I think he's worthy of being in the O's. Anyway, for me, Pearl Jam. I haven't seen them in concert. I've been talking about this with my wife. She has, and I need to go see them. Next time they come around, I got to see them, Everybody's getting older. You got to see them when you can. And they do shows the way Bruce Springsteen does shows. They just do shows and keep playing and always do a killer job live. And I thought that Eddie Vedder's solo album they put out this year was incredible. Was way better. Had so much energy, more than I expected it to be. Not that he doesn't do good stuff, but oh my God, it's not what you'd expect. Listen to it. Prince did an episode. I could say more about Prince, but, we're only on the P's here. It's already 30 minutes into this podcast, so you say more about Prince. Tell me what you think. The only other P, Louis Prima. Listen to any compilation of his, with or without Keely Smith. To me, that kind of jump jive or whatever you call it, I figure there was another term for it. It really was the precursor to rock and roll. It was the precursor to rock, one of many, and there are certainly many more African-American artists, Rocket 88, I think, things like that, who did more with that and did it first. But there's an energy that Louis Prima has in the way he sings and the driving force of the songs he does that is very rock to me. Q, okay, Queen. It's a compromised pick, not because I don't think Queen is amazing, but because they're there. They're kind of like Rush to me. Like they don't fully rank for my list, but I've loved a lot of what they've done. I respect them, and I needed a Q. Tell me if there's a better Q out there. R. Pointing to my t-shirt. REC. REC. The reason why I do this podcast is to share my music with you and to talk about music in general, sure. But REC has been my baby for a long time now. And the exciting thing I have to announce is that I am just about to release REC's greatest hits, or the best of REC. It's called REC Collection. Recollection, get it? The Best of REC, 2007 to 2020. And it will feature songs from each of the 8 albums that REC has released. 8 albums and EPs that REC has released. It's going to be a monster. It only scratches the surface, but it's a good representation. And the song featured at the end of this episode is going to be the first song on the album. You heard it here first. A song called Some Things Happen. I'll mention it again later. No one else has heard about this yet except for my Patreon people. Some Things Happen will be the first because I believe that it is one of the small handful of songs that contains REC. The electro power pop of REC is very, very well represented by that song. Red Hot Chili Peppers. Their new album, amazing. Except for the fact that they have another new album that's coming out very soon. Insane, and I love that because they just can't stop. And their stuff is as good as it's ever been. REM just did a little kind of sampling of their stuff. I've done their chronology, but I was listening to them in California for some reason when I was out there recently and just reminding myself why I loved them so much in the 80s and why I followed them in the 90s. And the guy I just talked to for episode 6, the guy I interviewed, also from Athens, Georgia. As much great music is. Smokey Robinson, my favorite Motown performer, Smokey Robinson. Still out there performing, by the way. I think he put a single out recently, last year maybe. And his voice, his songwriting. I've done his chronology. I'll probably do a future episode. Absolute favorite. The Roots, another Philly band. And I'm going to be doing an episode of them probably within the first 5 episodes because I can't believe I haven't done one yet. You may know the roots from Jimmy Fallon. I'm both excited and sorry for you if that's the case, because what they actually have done fully blows away that, even though that's great too. And anything Questlove puts his hands on is amazing as far as I'm concerned. But then there's Run DMC. You know, they didn't start it all, quote unquote, but they started it all. If you know hip hop history, you kind of understand what I mean by that. And I can't say enough about them. They really, if I knew when LL Cool J came out that I'd be sticking with hip hop, I think Run DMC was when I realized that the medium had way more legs and depth than people were giving it credit for even back then. And as we know, dominating. Smashing Pumpkins, another band I haven't seen live. I really need to see live. Yeah, Billy Corgan has some, things I maybe disagree with, but I have to. And when he is too controlling, often the music isn't quite. But then again, Zwan, his kind of follow-up band, I thought that album was great. They almost made the list, as a matter of fact. And you got to give it to Smashing Pumpkins. You just have to. The Smiths, yeah. We all know Morrissey, but Johnny Marr, come on. I always forget the other guy's name. But that's just seminal for me. It's seminal. Louder Than Bombs is something I'll take to my grave. It just is. Stephen Sondheim, may he rest in peace. My hands-down favorite musical theater composer. No one comes remotely close. No one. Stephen Sondheim. Soundgarden did an episode because of Chris Cornell. That was A Death is Dumb. Always sad about that, because it's someone you thought would be in it for the long haul. And then Matthew Sweet did an episode on Matthew Sweet, one of my most popular episodes. And yeah, it's still a tough call between Matthew Sweet and Fountains of Wayne. Those are both power pop, slightly different flavors, but just they're my 1-2 as far as power pop goes. Please look up Matthew Sweet. Please look beyond Girlfriend and Sick of Myself and all that, and actually listen to his catalog and even his new material. Very recent, I think last year. You have to listen to Matthew Sweet. Stone Temple Pilots, an underrated band. They're still out there. I've listened to everything they've done, but especially with Weiland. So yes, it was A Death is Dumb. Underrated in so many ways and surprising in so many ways. James Taylor. I'm almost done his chronology. Got 2 albums to go. He's going to be one of my first or next episodes of this season. There's no other folk, rock, or singer-songwriter-y guy who comes close to James Taylor for me. And again, just like with any chronology, if you listen through, you'll find some surprises and things you didn't know. I didn't know he did that, etc., etc. And with a life like his, the fact that he's still out there, killing it on Colbert and all that stuff and putting out new material, I absolutely love that. And to me, I won't go too much into it because I'm going to be doing an episode on him. But yes, James Taylor, they might be giants. If somebody asks me, what's a quirky band that I haven't heard of that you should get into, it's got to be them. And they have a giant catalog now. They've been around since 85, I want to say. But man, and they've done TV theme songs and just a bunch of different things and like children's albums and all of that. They're an incredible band in so many ways. I did an episode on them as well. U2, top 5, 100% top 5. I had a talk about U2 with the guy who stopped listening to music in 1990. And even though they existed before 1990, somehow they didn't count. And I know U2 can be polarizing, but they're one of the few bands from that era remaining, period, but from that era that I am still hugely looking forward to new material. And I know they're working on stuff. I've done sort of episodes on them, but not a full one, so I'll probably dedicate a full one to them at some point. Violent Femmes, I've done an episode on them. That kind of gothic, country punk, whatever, folk, punk, acoustic punk, whatever. Amazing. And Gordon Gano, great. They put out new material more than you think, so please look them up. W, The Who. Second favorite British invasion band. By far, really. Well, the Kinks come close, but no, The Who have just they're legends. I don't know what else to say about them. I'm sure I will do an episode on them at some point. Their new album, I think it was last year, was really good. Was really good. And I mean, even if you're not a huge Who fan, go listen to the new album. I think you'll be surprised. Wings. When I did the chronology for the Beatles, including all solo work, including all offshoot bands, including Traveling Wilburys even, I did Wings, of course, and was just thrilled with the stuff that I hadn't heard before. The Wombats. I may have to revise, because the Wombats to me are the band that comes closest to what REC achieves on some levels. They don't do everything I do and vice versa, but I think REC would be a great opening band for the Wombats. Let me just say that. If they ever tour the States again and need an opening band, would mesh really well. It is an electro power pop but they're a British band, real British flavor, and I love the lyrics. I love the guy's approach to singing, songwriting, and all of that stuff. Look up the Wombats. Stevie Wonder. I'll do an episode on Stevie Wonder. Of course I will. But as far as that kind of 70s soul, and 60s to a degree, but really 70s, no one comes close. No one. I'm sorry. Yes, Marvin Gaye was a genius, and Isaac Hayes, and the guy who did, well, I can't remember his name, but Stevie Wonder tops them all. And he was on the Eddie Vedder album recently, as was Ringo Starr, as was some other people. I believe the drummer from Red Hot Chili Peppers. But Stevie Wonder, of course. And X. Yeah, X. Slightly that's a compromised. I'm not into the punk band, with that name. XTC is probably the closest. If you know them, if you know the band, if you know Dear God, that's probably their most famous song at the moment anyway. It's a British band, but XTC, kind of a Beatles influence, but quirky and, dark in some ways, but bright in others. Good band, but it's an X. I had to have an X. Two Ys. First one may be a surprise, and it's Yazoo. Alison Moyet's band for the longest time, and I mean up until just a few years ago, I thought that the singer of that band was just a very high-pitched man. But no, she's not. She's amazing. And that album, The Attic, I can't believe I can't remember the name of that album. Situation is on it. I was a DJ. That was in every single set. You just know it was. Yes. It's my favorite progressive rock band, hands down, just hands down. For me, no one comes close. A lot of people say Genesis is the best. I've done, we talked about this, and I get it, and I do get it. But no one's going to shake me from Yes. And then Z, this I thought at first was a compromised letter, but I am beginning to think not. The Zombies. An incredible band. I love what they did. And when the main dude, I forget his name, formed Argent, I love that too. And you wouldn't even know, that was basically the same, guy. Because the sound was, I think, quite different. But 100% worthy band to look up, the Zombies. That's my list. That's it. The only other thing I have to say is stick around for the featured song, which is Some Things Happen. This is a song that I wrote at a time when a lot of things were happening, and even though it's not quite a list song like We Didn't Start the Fire or It's the End of the World as We Know It, it has a quality like that because the things that are mentioned in there, in particular Blackout Babies, listen for that lyric, Blackout Babies, and it's a pumping song. It's a song that wants to get you up and dance and mosh and whatever else, and it's one of my favorite REC songs. But that particular phrase comes from the fact that my wife at the time was pregnant with twins, and it was the blackout in New York happened. So you'll know the year if you know what I'm talking about. And shortly after that, we lost the twins. So that features as a lyric in the song. Some other lyrics were pulled directly from my life of the previous, 5 years or so. And it has an attitude that I had slightly gotten to in previous material under my name Nick, my artist name Nick, but never really bam. And so this was kind of the wake-up song for me, saying, well, what's the difference between Rec and Nick? Some things happen. So stick around and listen to it. Thank you for sticking around this long and listening to and watching this very first episode of Season 5. And I will talk to you next week.
Some things happen. Some things happen. You can get on your knees and pray, yeah, but some things happen. Some things happen. Some things happen. You can stay in your head all day, yeah, but some things happen. This is not the change you're hoping for. This is not your long lost love. This is not the hot new miracle. This is. Some things just occur. My mama used to say that there's always a way, but I just stopped listening to her. And I know you see yourself in everything I say and do. Well, I hate to burst your bubble, love. You are not the unnamed you. This is not a balanced argument. This is not an old friend. This is not a full ride scholarship. This is not a happy end. This is not your affirmation call. This is not a self-help club. This is not your mom's denial song. This is the truth. This is not your daughter's fairy tale. Some things happen, life goes wrong. Blackout babies will go away as soon as the lights turn on. Blackout babies die as soon as the lights turn on.